Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of our Secure Dental Podcast, where we bring in many different guests from both inside and outside our dental industry. And today we are joined by a special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Buske. I hope I said it right.
Yeah, that's correct. You're right on target, man.
Right.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, before we get started, I'm just going to give a shout out to my sponsor, DentVia, a virtual dental administration company that administers all the back-end staffing stuff, like virtually for our dental offices to equip our front desk and our managers. So we are called DentVia. I'm a co-founder, dentvia.com. That's again, www.dentvia.com. Now, without further ado, I got this gentleman here. He calls himself the Limitless Dentist. And because he helps so many people get out of burnouts. So with that being said and further ado, hey, Doc, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thanks, Noel. I appreciate it, man. And thank you for having me on this morning. I'm excited to share a little bit with you guys and share a little bit of my story. And because I think it can be relatable. I've been in dentistry now for 27 years and I still love what I get to do. Noel, you and I were talking for a second. Mm-hmm. Both of us love doing implants and both of us love doing full arch care. And I think that's also part of what I was put here on this planet to do, which is, for me, it's about, my purpose is really about what drives me. And my purpose is really about creating transformation in people's lives. It doesn't matter if I'm doing dentistry, doesn't matter if I'm doing coaching.
Sure.
That's exactly what I was born to do. I was born to be divine wrecking ball in some cases, and I was also born to be transformational in other cases. So it's a fun part of life that I get to have an opportunity to live into. And as I was saying, being in dentistry now for 27 years, I can honestly say I think I've made every mistake possible, and I've been through a lot in our profession. Our profession can be very difficult and it can be very rewarding all at the same time. So I'm happy to share any of my story with you guys today.
27 years, my man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me, Jeff, how did you get started with dentistry? We would like to hear that story first.
Well, gosh, it's funny because I grew up in Minnesota and now I'm in Texas. That's where I practice and live is in Texas. But I grew up in Minnesota. So I grew up playing a lot of hockey. And I was in a high school hockey game and I was playing hockey and I got hit. Probably the hardest I've ever got hit. Anyway, nonetheless, I broke my front tooth in half.
Wow.
And that was with a helmet on. That was with a mouth guard in. And I remember I had a date that night. It was a first date, by the way, with a girl from another school. And I had half a tooth. And I thought, oh my gosh, do I show up? Do I not go? I thought, well, I might not ever be able to take her out again. So I'm going. So, you've got a 17-year-old kid who's halfway self-conscious anyway, showing up. And anyway, she was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And so I told her and she said, do you still want to go? I said, of course, that's why I'm here. So we went out, had a great date, but it was one of those things that allowed me to experience what a lot of our patients feel, which is very self-conscious and kind of embarrassed with their smile and everything. And the artistry that went into the dentist that got an opportunity to fix my tooth, it just drew me in. I was like, wow, that is so cool. And it was just like, I was just infatuated with the artistic ability for him. I was, because I had the same thing our patients say. I hope that they can give me back a smile that I like. And my smile was perfect until then. And so I just wanted to make sure it was back. And once he was able to restore that, I thought, wow, what a gift to be able to give somebody. And that was so at 17, that was like it. I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I wasn't going to play pro hockey. I'm only 6 foot tall and 189 pounds at that time in high school. So I was like, probably not going to go pro.
You ruled that out, huh?
So dentistry it was, man. It became really clear though at that point. So
what dental school did you go to?
I ended up going to Baylor here in Texas. And, and then so I stayed afterwards. And then, I went to work up in Coppell, which is right outside DFW Airport for a little while. I had a great opportunity as an associate up there. And, it was very interesting because that was a time in my life where I had taken so much continuing education, like into all of Dawson and UBAG and Morley and Mopper, all these cosmetic guys and occlusion guys, and just like man, I thought I had everything. And I was like, man, where are the patients? Like I was literally like eating ramen noodles at night, wondering, can I afford my car payment? And I was like, holy shit.
So say that again. You say that again. Sorry. You were an associate and you went through all the CE courses because you thought like, this is it.
This is it. I was like, if I can have great skills, then everything will just line up. You know, people will just magically come in because my name's out there. And I didn't realize that I had to be a marketer. I didn't realize that I had no advertising. I didn't realize that I had a lead.
Love it.
None of that. So I was left in a very frustrated place. Like best way I can describe it was like, I felt like the guy who was all dressed up for prom. Like I had all these amazing skills, but no date, like nobody to use them on. I was like, well, I got all this stuff sitting here on the back shelf. Let's go, let's go. And so
wow. Yeah.
I became very, very disheartened with dentistry. And matter of fact, at that time, I was thinking about walking away from dentistry because I was like, golly, this is just not what I thought it was going to be. I don't know, maybe some of you have felt that way, but for me, that was a reality. I was literally thinking, holy cow. And it's so funny because there's pivotal people that come into your life at certain aspects and certain seasons at just the right time. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a God thing. And for some reason,
the law of attraction.
Bruce Baird was writing something on Dental Town at that time. And I was like, and he was writing about like what he was producing and things like that. It was so far out of my comprehension. And I thought, what in the world? And so I'm going to say something, but part of my language here. So I wrote him a private message. And in my message, I literally said, there's no fucking way you're doing what you're doing and it can be legal. And he didn't know me from anybody. He could have told me, go jump in the lake, whatever. And so he was kind enough to write me back. He said, no, we do this month after month after month. We have systems and processes in place. By the way, where do you practice? I said, I'm up in Capella. He said, oh my gosh, I'll be over in that direction next weekend at a sleep seminar. And that was when sleep was just on the kind of the leading edge. This was back in 2004. And so he said, why don't we get together and have a cocktail? I said, sure, what do I got to lose? So went and met him and visited. And, he said, where are you at? And that is such an important, it's an easy question to ask. But when you actually sit there and think about it, it made me think. I said, well, where I'm at really? And I just leveled with him. I said, I'm honestly contemplating leaving dentistry. And so he found out all the continuing education that I did. And he just asked me a question. He said, well, do you enjoy dentistry? And I said, yeah. I said, if I got to practice the way that I'm, wanting to practice, I think I would really love it even more. And he said, well, maybe you just need the right opportunity. So we decided that we were going to do a practice together. And it ended up getting kind of sold out from under us, and that was okay. But then a different turn of events happened, and he lost an associate. And so, like within a couple of weeks, he called and he said, "Hey, I have no idea if you have any interest in this, but would you like to come to Granbury, Texas, and work with me?" Now that was 72 miles away from where I was living. And I said, "You know what?" I said, "Yes, let's do this." And so I went. And then I decided, I said, if I come in there, I don't want to be just another associate. I said, I want to have an opportunity to be a partner. And so we sat down and we worked everything out and then worked through with Kane Waters and got a good plan set in order. And then he and I practiced together. We were partners, and then we practiced together for 17 years. And it was an amazing, amazing journey that we got to take together. He was a great mentor. And one of the things that I learned significantly from him was really about integrity. And there was nothing that he said that he promised that he didn't deliver on, which was really important. And so it's something that I get to carry through with our team members. And I think that's just such an important part of life and part of what I teach and coach on. That's our whole baseline. We call it living by a code. And that's, we're not lying. We're not lying to others. We're not lying to ourselves. But more importantly, we're honoring our word because, just like you, when you're up to big things, things are going to happen that you break your word on. But it's about cleaning it up. It's acknowledging it and getting yourself back in integrity and making things right. There's still going to be consequences in life, but it's really about getting back in and restoring and re-honoring your word. I think that's
a baseline.
Very important with integrity. And integrity
Yeah,
to
it's a
me is,
foundation for everything.
yeah, to me, integrity is really is about being whole and complete and lacking nothing and not hiding anything in the shadows or the darkness. It's really just being whole. And so, and then wholeheartedly playing all in. So that was my transition into where I am still currently practicing, which is in Granbury, Texas, which is a little bit outside of Fort Worth, about 40 miles west and south of Fort Worth. We live on a beautiful lake here. We get to go play all the time. We'd love to go wake surfing and have a good time on the boat with myself, my wife, and the kids. And we enjoy life here. And it's a great place to be, great place to practice. It's fun. You know, I was talking to a doc last night. He was saying, yeah, I practice in a town that's like 15,000 people and there's like 4 or 5 dentists here. And he was talking about having to take all these plans and everything. And I started to laugh and I said, let me just paint you a different reality. I said, I practice in a town of 7,000 people. And I said, there's over 30 dentists here. And I said, and we take no plans. And I said, but we learned how to market. And so we draw in people from all over. We bring in people from Dallas and from Fort Worth and from sometimes Oklahoma and everywhere. I said, so your reality is what you truly make it. And I said, so if you're in the mindset that the only thing that you can do is beyond plans and PPOs, which I have nothing against, but I said, if that's your mindset, then that's going to be your mindset. I said, but you do have different opportunities. I'm just going to share with you my story so you can have an opportunity to consider something different, you know? And so just, you can see his eyes open up and say, I didn't think that was possible. I said, I'm in a town that's half of your size and this is what we do. I said, it just depends on what you want to do. You can write your own story. That's the big part.
So I want to spend a little brief time with you on people who wants to go fee for service. And there's a lot of them out there. I see it every single time in groups, in demo groups. You know, there are like horror stories and there are success stories. What is the best way? So let's say there's a solo guy working out from his own office. And what is the best way? He's heavily people involved.
Man,
what would be the best way to transition, man? I mean, you need to share this nugget because there are a lot of people who are getting burnt out.
Well, and I think that is such a great question because I will share this with you. Let me back up a second here. I had my practice with Bruce, and then halfway between Dallas and Fort Worth, there's kind of an area called Arlington and Mansfield. And for some crazy reason, I decided I'm going to just open up a scratch practice over there too, because we service a lot of people there. And so I decided that'd be a good idea. Literally, I gave myself a second job. And that also invited in a lot of stress into my world. But opening it up from scratch, I also thought, you know, I better put some plans in place and in play over here. And it was kind of funny because I was also marketing, but what was funny is I was shooting myself in the foot because, you know, I'm taking a 30% haircut at least on some of the plans, sometimes 40% haircut on some of the fees. And people that were coming in, they were like, oh yeah, we saw your ads and your marketing. And then we saw that you were on our plan. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just killing myself here, you know, and it was brutal. And I will tell you,
was this for the new location or for
That was for the new location. Where I've practiced, we've always been fee for service, but I thought to get things off the ground, I better.
Did it affect your current one?
No.
Okay.
No, it didn't.
Okay.
It's because that's 52 miles away. So plenty of distance away. But man, I really learned a solid lesson there. That office was one of the greatest teaching tools for me in all my life because it caused so much stress in my world. I almost ended up divorced. I'll talk about that later here. We can have another little conversation in a little bit. But to answer your question, what I did, and I had associates over there running in that office. So I had to build a culture remotely. I'd have practice, and I had to have marketing and advertising. I was also taking plans. And it was a very difficult task to establish remotely. I would go over there on Fridays and work 1 day a week. I would do bigger cases on Fridays for me to do implant surgery and things like that. But after a while, it took me a while to establish that and to kind of establish some credibility in that area. And also for me to be able to bring in that type of care. So I think one of the biggest things for a transitional standpoint is really find your lane that you love to practice in and what you love. Maybe it's cosmetics, maybe it's implants, maybe it's clear aligner therapy, maybe it's sleep, Maybe it's, and some things. But anything, I think, just aside, you still need your bread and butter to always produce and to have that and to pay bills and to make sure your overhead's taken care of. But when you can actually start to establish a name for yourself inside of a lane, I think then that is the time to start to double down on your marketing and your advertising in that special area, not just generalized advertising, like let's bring in the whole family. Advertising and marketing that is specific for those procedures that you love. Because once you've started to get the skill set required to apply that at an elite or a high level, now you can deliver on that, and now you become marketable. That gives you some ways to start to set yourself apart. If you're not doing anything in that realm and you're just doing general dentistry, there's no offense to that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not doing that, it's going to be very difficult to start to differentiate yourself. You need to have things that differentiate you. Like we've worked with John Coyce's risk factors for so long, and I make that part of my talk when I'm sitting down the first time. And we use that in some of our marketing. We talk about risk factors. Nobody else is talking about that. There might be other people who are doing it, but they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. They don't market it. They don't advertise about it. You have to find the things that make you unique. Does that make sense? So that's number one.
Absolutely.
When those individuals are coming into your practice, it is a journey. It is an experience. They're not just coming through as a person that, just coming in, I need a couple things done. You are creating an experience for this person to have. Everything from the phone call to what happens when they come into your office, the way that they're treated, the way that they're greeted, the way that you occur in their world when you walk in and introduce yourself. And I like to think, my mind thinks in frames and frameworks. And so I like to set the frame with the patient. After I greet them, we create some connection, create 3 links to a chain that can't be broken in far as relationship, meaning finding commonalities before we ever talk dentistry. Sitting down with them eye to eye, just like you and I are doing, Noel, just eye to eye, having a conversation, just being with somebody. So like, let me get in there and get in your mouth where I'm comfortable. Because they're in an uncomfortable place. So let's get comfortable. Let's get to know each other. And let's have a little bit of a human conversation. And then it's time to set the frame along the lines of like, this is going to be a different experience than you've ever had. So I'm telling them that. Today, we're going to look at your risk factors. I'm going to analyze things for you. I'm going to tell you whether you're low, medium, or high risk along these areas. And then the greatest thing is I'm going to share with you, here's things that you can do to lower your risk factors. Here's things that we can do to lower your risk factors. And then together, we're going to co-create a plan that works for you to get you what you want, need, and desire. Does that sound good? I mean, it's just so easy.
Conversational, right?
Conversational. So to answer your question, I personally think one of the greatest ways to start to wean away from getting off from some of the PPOs is start to get yourself and your skill set up to a very good level and to where you can have something that differentiates you. And then you've got to be able to apply the marketing. And you've got to be able to be willing to spend the money on the marketing to bring patients in. We usually spend between 8 and 10% on our marketing.
Wow.
But gosh, when you're bringing in $400,000 or $500,000 a month, you can spend a lot in marketing.
Absolutely.
And you can market anybody else. That's why it doesn't matter if there's 30 dentists where I live and there's 7,000 people. It doesn't matter if there's 50 dentists here. I'm not competing with those dentists. I'm competing with the people wanting to buy a new home, wanting to buy a new vehicle, wanting to take a huge, expensive trip.
That's where they are.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't care about the other dentists. I mean, it's not that I don't care about them. I should say they're not my competition, put it that way. So
love it.
I'm looking at things, and I also have a very abundance mindset. That's also a very different perspective.
That helps.
When you look at moving away from a PPO, to me, PPOs are kind of more of a scarcity mindset. So it doesn't really kind of fit that aspect of it. I'm taking the scraps off from the table of what the insurance is going to feed me. Does that make sense? As opposed to me writing my own story and saying, this is what I want. This is what I want for my professional career. This is the type of dentistry that I want to be doing. These are the types of patients that I want to be seeing. I want to have happiness and fulfillment and joy, as opposed to the life being sucked out of me. It's feeling like I'm on a
working for them. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think that's one of the problems is dentists feel like they get on this treadmill and they start running and they're like, hey, coach, when can I stop? Never, never. And they're on this never-ending treadmill because they're just working themselves to death as opposed to working in a fulfilling purpose, fulfilled practice.
You know what you just said, Jeff, it resonates so much with me because this is exactly what I'm trying to do with my associate dentist. When I'm trying to differentiate them, I try to work with them. Hey, what do you like? You like aesthetics? Let's talk about that. You like implants, or you like, ortho, sleep, whatever. But some of them, they are so close-minded, just wanting to do bread and butter dentistry day in, day out. And I keep telling them, hey, this is just going to be another commodity. It's just going to get worse as time goes by.
Yes.
And sometimes I think it's just in the mindset, like you said.
Yeah.
Because trying to differentiate yourself, it's so much more work, right?
Yes. And that's why I said that one simple question that Bruce asked me a long time ago, like, what do you want?
Right.
And not just like right now, but having those docs and you guys who are listening out here, ask yourself that question today. Like, what do I really want? Like, if I look at my life now and I look at my life a year from now and 5 years from now and 10 years from now, what do I want my career to look like? What do I want to have in life? Not just in my dental practice, because
everything.
Also there's a lot of identity problems. We identify as a dentist. Listen, dentistry is something that you get to do. It's not who you are. It's something that we get an opportunity, I think an opportunity and a privilege to do, but it's not who I am. There's so much more. I'm also a husband. I'm also a father. I'm also a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a leader. I'm also a marketer. I'm a closer. I'm all these different things. But I'm also, when I start to look at those things, like when you start to get into leadership and things like that, you look at getting into things into your identity that can't be stripped away. Because I see, and I'm 53, but I start to see in the dentists who, when they start to retire, if that has been their entire identity, they're left in a very difficult place once they walk away from dentistry because they're losing their whole part of themselves. And so when you realize if you tie your identity to things that can be stripped away, you can have a problem with that. I mean, even with some of the things I just mentioned, like as a husband, that could be stripped away. If my wife died or decided to divorce me, or my kids, if something happened to them, all of those things can be stripped away. When you start to tie your identity to those things, you have to be careful. That's why you also have to take that identity into deeper levels. Does that make sense?
1000%. So let's lead right into Limitless Dentist. And let's talk about what's that all about and how do you help these guys cope with themselves and cope with the environment?
That's a great question. And it really has to come back to, as I was saying, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. And the practice that I was talking about, it about sucked the life out of me, creating that scratch practice 52 miles away, as I was saying. And I didn't really have the bandwidth or the capacity at that time to deal with all the stress, because there's financial stress in that, there's managing stress in that, there's leadership stress in that. You've got to cast the vision, you've got to enroll the team in the vision, you've got to create a culture all inside of that. And then you also have to meet expectations and deliver on high levels for patients in order to grow the practice, to get away from me. And just to finish up, I then trimmed out plans one at a time, just cut. And then we just transitioned that into full fee-for-service practice.
So you didn't do it all at once?
Not all at once. I cut 2 or 3.
Okay.
And then boom. And then I cut the next. I only had 5. But I cut the first, I want to say 2, and then I cut the next 3 at one time. So boom, boom, done.
Got it.
But it wasn't all 5 at once. It was spread out. I want to say, it was spread out over about 6 months.
Perfect.
So, and it was great. And, my associates, they knew that was happening. And some of them were very worried. Oh my gosh, it's going to hurt. I said, just trust me. Please trust me. You're going to actually make more and you're going to get paid more because you're going to be paid more for what you're doing and you're going to love it. And they all did. They thrived in that manner. So, and then we ended up building up the practice enough to where actually brought in a prosthodontist, and it was perfect for him because he thrived in there. And that's what ended up building the practice there, and then sold it to them. So it worked out very, very well, but it was a lot of stress in the meantime. Like I said, I had been divorced already in 2012. I blew out one marriage. So listen, guys, dentistry can be very stressful. And I started this scratch practice at the very, very end of 2013, beginning of 2014. By 2016, this had taken such a toll on me because, again, I said I didn't, as an entrepreneur and as a businessman, I didn't have the bandwidth or the capacity to manage all of that stress. So I would bring that home and I would bring it, unfortunately, into my family. And when you take irritation, you don't deal with that, then that leads to frustration. And then when you don't deal with that, then that leads to anger. And then when you don't deal with anger and you push that down, then that leads to rage. And rage is not something that we're meant to deal with. So when we push that down, it comes out. It's like the equivalent of pushing a beach ball underwater and just keep pushing it down further and further. And the more you push that further and further, when you release that beach ball, it's going to come up with such velocity and force. That's kind of the way that I think about rage. And when that rage would come out, it would come out with my wife. It would come out with my kids. And it generally happens around the people that you love the most. And I would sit there and think, shit, man, I give my patients, people that I just met, the best of me. And then my family, the people that love me the most, get the worst of me. And that was brutal. That was a brutal truth that I had to come to the realization with. I also, and I'm just sharing it like it is. You guys can look at me and judge me, but I'm just telling you the truth.
I want you to say that again, because this is one of those things where I hear it day in, day out. They're like really grumpy at home, but the best version at work.
Yeah, you give the best to yourself, to your patients, and some of your team. Not always your team, but your patients get the very best of you.
But not your family.
Bring the worst of you at home to the people that love you.
I love it.
And that's just the truth. And matter of fact, as I was building that practice, I looked at my family as getting in the way of my time to build a successful practice. Now, that's difficult to say, but that, again, that's the truth. And so I didn't have the tools to manage the stress at that time. I didn't have the tools. I was starting to feel burnt out. And so the only thing that I really knew to do was to sedate. So I would come home literally every day and just start to drink. And then I would drink and I'd pick up my wife, and then she'd have to drink just to deal with my stupid, crazy ass. And it was like we would then just battle about stuff. And it was really sad because over time that started to destroy some of what I really loved. And so I was, if you guys watch the picture here, I was headed down towards divorce number 2 until one night when my wife and I both had enough to drink and we were just in this explosive argument. And literally, no, her words just stopped me in my tracks. And she said, Jeff, I didn't sign up for this shit. And I mean, it hit me like a fucking ton of bricks, like boom, right between the eyes. I didn't even have a response. I didn't know what to say. I didn't have anything to say because it was the truth. And I remember there laying in bed that night and just, I prayed and I said, you know, God, I realize that I created this mess, but I'm asking you to help me see a way out. Please help me. Please help my family. And it's crazy how things work. Like didn't ever do anything on social media at that time or anything like that. I had just gotten onto Facebook for some ability to be able to do some marketing and things on there. And like this next week, this crazy thing came across my feed, and it was from a coach and a mentor who I still use. Guys, he's a crazy psychopath named Garrett White. He ran something called Wake Up Warrior. And so I was sitting there and I clicked on this ad, and my wife was cooking up some dinner, and I was listening to this guy, and it was like he was speaking into it was like he was inside my head. I was like, holy shit, this is exactly the way I'm operating. Even my wife, who was cooking, she stopped and she said, who are you listening to? And I said, I don't know, but this guy has my number, man. And she was like, this is interesting. So anyway, could click on a thing, and we ended up, she goes, do you want to watch that together? I said, yeah, I think so. So we watched like a 45-minute documentary. And it was like a video sales letter to come in and have an experience. And she looked at me at the end of it and she said, you're going to go do that, aren't you? And I said, I think I need to. And she said, I think you do too. And so I had no idea what all it was going to entail, what it was going to cost, how much time it was going to be. And it was like a week-long process. The best way that I could describe at that time Warrior Week was it would be like if you took Tony Robbins and then you put together Navy SEALs Hell Week, and then you put together Brad Pitt from Fight Club. That was the combination of what occurred there. And so it was physical beatdown. It was, we were in and out of the ocean doing log PT, all kinds of different shit, crazy stuff, and like emotional things, and literally having like full on boxing battle. It was crazy. But at that time in my world, that's what I needed. Like I needed to be cracked open that hard in order for that part of me to die and for me to be reborn and come back as a different version, to unlock new versions of me. Does that make sense?
1000%.
So it unlocked new levels in me that allowed me to come back and show up as a different way as a husband, allowed me to show up as a different way as a father, allowed me to show up completely different as a businessman, as an operator inside my practice. I started to lead in a different way. Why? Because I decided to lead myself in a different way. I started to see myself in a different way. And so it started to look at moving from a victim mentality and then creating a leadership mentality. And we have a saying that victims wait and leaders create. And so when we start to look at it from that perspective, we start to see, gosh, I'm in charge of my own story. I have self-authorization. I can take and create what I want. And so I'm going to utilize my agency. When you start to operate that way, you start to shift how you occur. You start to shift your energy. You start to take care. Like I got my morning, I start working on me early because I want to fill up my cup first so my cup can overflow onto others. If my cup's empty, then guess what? Every interaction that I have with somebody else has to be transactional, because if my cup's not full, if I give you something more out of it, I've got to get something back. When my cup's plenty full, I can give freely without any expectation in return.
Love it.
That's a whole different animal. And I'm setting my own table. I'm not eating crumbs off the floor of circumstance.
Taking charge, right?
Absolutely. So out of that, as I was saying, it changed and transformed how I operate and how I occur in life. And from that perspective, now that's what was born with, okay, if this is working for me, I know this can start to work for other guys. So I started to work with some of my buddies and friends, and they were like, holy shit, this is working great. This is fantastic. And that's when I decided, hey, let's take this to, hey, a lot more professionals inside of our space need this. So I coach men inside of the space, inside of our dental communities here, inside of our profession, in order to create synergy and harmony really across 4 domains in our world. So across our body, our health, our fitness, our being, our spirituality, our purpose, and in my position too, God in my life, and then also our balance. So our relationships with our wife, our kids, and then other meaningful relationships too, your team members, your friends, your extended family, and then also your business, so your practice and your bank accounts. Getting all 4 of those areas to work simultaneously is huge. Because what I notice, and you might notice this too, most men have maybe 1 of those areas, maybe 2 at best, working simultaneously on fire at one time. The other ones are kind of slacking. Like, man, you may be killing it in your practice, maybe producing like crazy and doing well, but there's also the stress component. So you might eat like shit and eat fast food and then not spending enough time with your wife and kids. And you're like, oh, I got, like I was doing, like, I got to build my practice. I got to do this. I got to do this. I'll get to that later. Well, that later never comes. Or you might be on fire with like, man, my fitness is on point. I've got my 6-pack. I don't care if you got a 6-pack or not. It doesn't matter to me. I want to be functionally fit. I want to have longevity. I want to be able to go outside, play with my kids, have a great time. I want to be able to go out behind the boat, surf. I want to be able to go hike. I want to have functionality in my world. I don't want my body to be deconditioned over time. Dentistry is hard on your body.
1000%, man.
And if you don't take care of it, it will destroy you and it will shorten your career. So you can have your body on point, but then be slacking in other areas too. So we want to create that harmony around all areas so that you can actually have a life that works, and we call having it all, built on the foundation of integrity. Does that make sense?
Love it. So Jeff, here's a problem with our profession. Not only our profession, but people in general. We hear great advice. We really want to do it. But there's always this one thing that stops us, from taking action. When you deal with your clients, how do you make them overcome that procrastination? Like, hey, I got to do it, because if I'm not doing it, the only shortcut is getting it done, right?
Yeah.
We all know it's good for us. We all know what we know. We all know about the exercise routine and eating healthy, but why don't people do it?
Well, I would say the one way that we get past all that is it starts with you getting honest with yourself. And because if you can tell yourself the truth about where you're at today, then there's a possibility in a future that's available for you and that you can and be willing to chase. But if you bullshit yourself and you lie to yourself, then there's no fucking way on earth anybody else, myself, anybody else can included, be able to motivate you to some bullshit existence.
Nothing's going to work,
see.
right?
Because now everything then is built on fiction and fantasy. And that's the way that most of our world operates, is in fiction and fantasy.
Right.
And so it starts with getting clear with yourself and telling yourself the truth and looking at the true facts of today. Once that's established, now you can envision a future that is truly possible because it's based in the reality of today. And I think that's one of the reasons that people stay stuck is the fact that they're living in fiction and fantasy, and everything that they're envisioning is just this total extended version of that fiction and fantasy. And so it just gives them a dopamine hit and they don't move. They don't take action at all. But when they look at the true reality of where they are today, and if they like where they are today, great. There's still another possibility of what's waiting and what can be upscaled and leveled up on the other side of that. So when we look at the possibilities, we start to see, oh, that's available. In between there is where we're at today and where we want to be, or we can look at it like this, where we are today and where we want to be. And there's always a gap in there. And once we can see the gap of here's where I'm at and here's the new possibility, this is kind of my pit. If I'm not loving where I'm at in life, this is my new peak up here. In between there's the gap. The gap is scary. And that's why also a lot of people don't want to move, because it's like we've never been there. We don't know. We've never been. So it's easy, like if you look at scale of life on like 1 to 10 and you're like playing at a level 1 and you're like, oh shit, life sucks here, man. And somebody's like, hey, just do this. And you'll be at like a level 3. You're like, okay, let me do that. What's hard is when you're like playing at level 6, level 7, life is comfortable. And then you're like, oh, to get to level 10, I've got to let go. I might even have to put level 6 or 7 at risk to get to level 10. Holy cow. Like with what you guys are doing with real estate and everything like that, you guys do things very calculated, but in some people's mind, it's like, oh my gosh, that sounds going to be risky, right? And so how do I take that leap of faith? How do I do that? And you have to look at it from, okay, what am I letting go of? And what's the new possibility over here? There's always going to be some risk associated with things, but we want to take calculated risk. And guess what? We're not taking the big jump from here all the way to here in one leap, because you'll leap and then you'll get a little short and then you'll fall down and then come back and go right back into the comfort zone of where you're loving life. Right. So what we look at doing is, hey, what is the best next step that you can take to move forward in that? Let's just take that first step there.
The first
step to move us forward. I'm not even worried about hitting the home run. Let's just talk about, let's hit singles, man. Let's just hit singles. Singles aren't big and sexy. The home run is big and sexy, right? Let's hit the home run. But that's like making the leap from here to here. Let's just hit singles. And then pretty soon after 4 hits, you've got to run. Now, it's not sexy, but it gets results. And to me, results are sexy. I'd rather have results than, hey, oh, that looked so pretty when I hit the ball far, but I got out. But it looked pretty when it came off the bat. Man, I think getting results, that to me is sexy. When you look at my fruit,
Love,
that's what I like to look at. Because
love
it
it.
comes down to results. That's it. Everything that we're after in life is about creating the journey and after chasing down amazing results that are meaningful to us.
Love it, man. Love it. So what is the onboarding like, and how can people get in contact with you? Because they probably will have some questions. Okay, if they want to work
Sure.
with you, what does a process look like? And who are your ideal clients? Let's put it this way, because you just said, like, you got to stop bullshitting with yourself.
Yes.
Right? I mean, would you like take somebody who's like still like kind of like in the zone where they're fantasizing, or somebody who's ready to go?
That's such a great question. So part of the onboarding process is for me to sit down and we have a one-on-one conversation. For anybody coming into the game with me, it is an interview, and it is an application to come into the program, because A, I want to keep the program operating at a very high level, and B, we don't want to compromise that. And C, I want to see, again, if you're able to be coachable, because if you can't tell yourself the truth, then there's no way that you can tell anybody else the truth.
Exactly.
And then there's no way to really, truly coach you. I would be doing you a disservice. And that puts me out of integrity, because if you can't be honest with yourself, there's no way that I can know truly where you're at and where you want to go. And if I can't do that, then there's no way that I can speak into that gap. But when I know, and we know together, and we're excited about where we go, now we can speak into that gap all day. And now we can put the frameworks in order to get into work. And now we can go ahead and start to get the results, to start to collapse that time to make that happen. So the best way to get a hold of me literally is just find me on Instagram. It's dr.jeffbuske. So Dr. Jeff Buske. Send me a DM on Instagram. You could also find me on LinkedIn, Jeffrey Buske on LinkedIn. Easy to find there. You will find me on both those spots. But that is absolutely the best way to contact me.
Perfect.
As far as the onboarding process inside of there, like I said, we'll go through an interview, sit down, and just have a conversation just like this. It's very easy. Just find out where you're at, where you want to go, and if I can help you. And if I can't help you, I'll at least look at it, pointing you in a direction where I think that you can find some help.
Love it.
I'm very interested in that. But our process is great. It's virtual for most of the learning. We do calls every week on Zoom, and it's with me. And so we're just tearing through things. We set up 90-day challenges in all 4 of those areas, and we just knock them out and have a great time along the way. And it's an awesome way to live. It's such a unique way to live. I want to throw one last thing in here, because I think this is important. When you start to look at, we were talking about results and fruit, and this just came to mind. So I will tell you guys this. With the framework of the core 4, the body, being, balance, and business that I was sharing with you, adding in that framework and then the framework of the code by living in integrity, those 2 things alone, that was it, period. Between 2016, when I started to apply this in my life, and 2021, I went back and ran the numbers, because we bought in a whole bunch of new equipment in 2022 for all of our full art stuff. We got all our digital stuff. But between 2016 and 2021, I want you guys to hear this. I bought 0 new equipment in my practice, and I didn't change anything about the way that I practice. I added in no new procedures, no new technology. But check this out. I added an additional, not a total, an additional 7 figures to my own personal production because of what I'm teaching, because of the code, because of the core 4. Those 2 frameworks alone added an additional 7 figures to my production, all because of the way my mindset shifted and my leadership shifted. Our team became so powerful, and it just is a culture that is that's pretty phenomenal, and I'm proud of that. But I want you guys to hear that. I'm not saying that in a braggadocious manner, but I want to be able to quantify something for you so you can see, hey, this is possible. Well, is that possible for you? I don't know. I don't know how driven you are. I don't know any of those things. But what if even half of that was possible? What if even 25% of that is possible for you? Would that be meaningful to you? Would that be helpful to help put a kid through college? All of those things start to come into play. And again, without having to buy a $100,000 laser, without having to buy, whatever it may be. I mean, the price of equipment keeps going up and up and up as we continue to give our patients the best. Why not give yourself the best? best version of you.
That's one part we all neglect.
Yes.
That's a fact.
Yes.
And last thing I want to ask you is, what does success mean to you?
Man,
Your
that
definition.
is such a great question. I love that question because it's different for everybody, right?
Right.
It's
And I want
totally
to know
different.
your version.
Yeah, for my version, it is truly measured with my happiness and joy and waking up to a life that I am happy with. That to me is success. And so when I can wake up and I'm happy with where I'm at professionally, where I'm at in my marriage is on fire and not burning down, on fire in a great way with my wife, and having great relationships with my kids, man, and my health is great. My connection with God is great. When those things are on point, that to me is success. And that also, as success increases, that gives you freedom. And so that's, I think, what we're also all after is freedom.
Love it. Love it. Hey, Doc, thanks a lot so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, this was fun, man. I appreciate it. It was a good time. I enjoyed getting a chance to visit with you. And thank you to the listeners. Hopefully something that I said was going to be useful for you guys. And if it sparks a conversation, love to have a conversation with you and see if there's something that I can help you with.
100%. I learned a lot too. So, I mean, that was really insightful. Well, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me on as a guest, Noel.
All
Appreciate
right.
it, man.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining. Make sure to like and subscribe. Now we will land our plane and check out our next episode. We all know where to reach Jeff at, and I will definitely put the link down below. All right. Thanks, Jeff.
See y'all.